For thousands of years, people have invented and endured all kinds of disciplines, deprivations and discomforts in the hope of achieving enlightenment. Spending a week under canvas in Hampshire hardly ranks with some of the great sacrifices that litter the history of practically every religion. The atmosphere here at Brockwood Park is that of the national campsite. The only ceremonies and rituals performed are self-imposed. The man that more than 3,000 people have come to hear has rejected all of the panoply and dogma imposed by organised religion. He's even rejected the role for which he was groomed, Messiah. He's Jiddu Krishnamurti.
I've come to hear Krishnamurti.
You're first in the queue. How long have you been waiting for?
Since about 10:15 last night.
Why was it important to get there quite that early?
To be close.
He invites one to have a conversation with him. He's always saying, can we discuss together this, that and the other? And this is an invitation to really to participate. And that you can't do if you're a quarter of a mile down the tent.
It's very profound, and I think if you can listen to him, something in your brain might start happening.
It's probably shouldn't be necessary to come every year. Once you've heard it, but you know, it's like looking at a mountain or a tree, you know, so it's good to come.
Now in his 91st year, Krishnamurti has been described as one of the greatest philosophers and teachers of all time, a role he can hardly have anticipated 56 years ago, when, to the profound shock of his devoted followers, he announced he was not the Messiah and dissolved the organisation of which he was the...
Krishnamurti never refers to himself as I, always as K or the speaker. So what is the role of the man they have come to hear?
What is the role of a flower? It just exists. And those who like to go and look at it, smell it, and like it, say what a beautiful flower it is, it exists.
Krishnamurti presents a calm and conventional exterior. With a stunning lack of pomp and ceremony, he sits very upright and very still on a hard, straight-backed chair and talks, without notes and without preparation, for at least an hour. Looking at this slight, unassuming figure, it's hard to believe his bizarre and extraordinary history. He was born in 1895, the 8th child of a Brahmin family, the highest caste at a time when the system was rigidly observed. He was very close indeed to his mother, who, before he was born, said she had a premonition that he would be, in some way, remarkable. She died when Krishnamurti was 10 years old, and the family moved to Adyar, near Madras. It was here, living in extreme poverty, that he was spotted by Charles Webster Leadbeater, a leading figure in the Theosophical Society. Theosophy was a world movement which embraced all religions. They believed that following on Buddha, Krishna and Christ, the world was ready for the next incarnation of the Messiah. Its president, Annie Besant, was a flamboyant figure who fought uncompromisingly for a whole range of social reforms in Britain and India. Krishnamurti must have looked an unlikely candidate, underneath crooked teeth and a vacant expression. But Leadbeater said the child had an aura of unselfishness. He was the chosen one. Mrs. Besant adopted him and began grooming him for his future role by bringing him to England. One of the first people he met was Lady Emily Lutyens, wife of the architect Sir Edwin. A committed theosophist, she took him straight to the heart of her family. Her daughter Mary, now aged 77, is Krishnamurti's oldest friend and his biographer. She remembers vividly the moment that Krishnamurti and his young brother Nitya arrived in London.
These two little boys arrived in England. My mother saw them and took enormous pity on them. They were wearing European clothes for the first time. They were in Norfolk jackets and shoes which pinched them. They looked miserable, shivering with cold. And she mothered them.
How did you feel about him?
I didn't think he had a brain, that he was very simple-minded. It's absolutely staggering to me, looking at him back in that, what he can do now, what's come out of him now. I just can't believe it sometimes. And you wouldn't really think that, because every single thing he says, it may look like it may appear to be like Buddhism, it may appear to be like this, that, or the other, it may be a certain bit of Sermon on the Mount, I don't know. But he wouldn't know it, he's never read it. So everything has come, he's discovered for himself. And what amazes me is what he's found in himself from that very vacant, certainly very unintelligent young man.
Krishnamurti and Nitya were introduced to a rich and aristocratic Edwardian London. Of the two brothers, Nitya was considered the quicker and brighter. His death some years later was to affect Krishnamurti deeply. Over the following years, the brothers travelled all over Europe to America and Australia. Theosophists everywhere eagerly awaited the day when Krishnamurti would assume the role for which he was destined. Krishnamurti had a fascination for all things mechanical. He taught Mary Lutyens how to drive. The relationship blossomed. Was she in love with him?
Yes, I'd been in love with Nitya tremendously. He was the love of my life. And then I suppose I fell in love with Krishna after Nitya's death. He wrote wonderful letters, and unfortunately I destroyed all his letters to me.
Was there a point at which he ever really believed that he was going to be the new Messiah?
Yes, definitely. He did believe, and there was a wonderful occasion when we'd all been in Sydney under Mr. Leadbeater, and we came back for the Jubilee Convention at Adyar. That was I suppose its 50th year, 1925. And it was rather expected that the Lord would speak through him for the first time. And I was there, and he was speaking at 8 o'clock under the banyan tree. It was a wonderful place. And he was talking about that when he comes, this thought which he used to talk about in those days, when he comes. And he suddenly changed to saying, when I come, I will do this. And it was an absolutely thrilling moment.
Krishnamurti was extremely grateful to all those who had such a trusting faith in him. He tried his best to please them, going to huge theosophical gatherings and undergoing for him the torture of getting up and speaking in public. Obviously the theosophists influenced him, but it seems only superficially. All the time his own philosophy, his own view of how to arrive at the truth. The time bomb had begun to tick. In 1929, at a vast gathering of theosophists at Oman in Holland, it exploded.
I think it was in the morning, he spoke up and he said, I'm now going to dissolve the order which I happen to be head. You can go and join another order if you want to. I don't want followers. I don't want followers. If there's one person who understands, it can do more good than all these 3,000 people here. And it was a big and very rich organization. And he gave it all completely away, and all the land and all the property and the castle that had been given, he gave it all back to the owner. And he divested himself of all property. And one of the things, a very lovely speech he gave on that occasion, was to say, truth is a pathless land. You cannot get to it by any path whatever.
In what became his most famous speech, Krishnamurti said, "This is no magnificent deed, because I do not want followers, and I mean this. The moment you follow someone, you cease to follow truth. I am concerning myself with only one essential thing, to set man free. I desire to free him from all cages, from all fears, and not to found religions, new sects, nor to establish new theories and new philosophies." The speech was such a shock to many of the followers that they turned away from the man from whom they had expected so much. Others took a different view. Today, one of those early devotees travels every year from New Zealand to hear him speak, Basil Gossage.
To some it was a very traumatic experience, the end of the world. In my own case, I thought, well, if Kay has got the, pardon the phrase, the spiritual guts to do that, to say, I'm disbanding the order, it's not necessary, truth is a pathless land, I thought, well, he'll do me. At least he's 100% honest. That's been borne out over 55 years.
Krishnamurti has developed and expanded his teaching, but he still rejects all organised religion.
See, we are now trying to impose morality on people, right?
Many religions
I know.
tried.
They've failed. Why?
You tell me, why?
Because they're based on some belief, which has no value at all, on some dogma, right? Faith, and do this, don't do that. That's what religions have done.
They would say they are all different ways, different paths.
That's all good old game, that, different paths, because I make it do, and I say, it's my path. You are a Christian, you say, that's your path. It's nonsense. Path to what? They say, to God, to truth. As though fixed. God and truth are stationary.
Aren't they?
Of course, I mean, living thing can't be stationary.
The people who come to the gatherings are a disparate bunch of all nationalities, rich and poor. No one ever counts how many come, and though there is a collection, no one is charged admission. If they have anything in common, it seems to be an intellectual rather than a spiritual approach to life, though Krishnamurti teaches that too much thought is one of man's biggest problems. Are they expecting you to be their authority, do you think?
Partly. And partly also, they want you to tell them what to do.
They must be very disappointed when you don't.
Yes. Not disappointed, they say, what the devil is he talking? Or say, I must understand what he's talking about. You are not understanding somebody, you're understanding yourself.
I feel I understand intellectually, but actually in my life I think it's rather limited. You know, I mean, the actual... It hasn't changed me completely. That's what I mean. When I hear him, I think I understand completely what he's saying in terms of the words he uses and so on. But it doesn't have its corresponding effect in my life.
Why is that?
I don't know. I think the self seems to be so strong, and one resists it so completely.
He really is nobody. And if we could understand that completely, that might change our lives. But we don't.
What do you get out of coming in?
Pardon?
What do you take away from a week here?
That's the whole problem. We all want to have something. That's the goddamn problem. It's understandable though, but that's our problem. We are so greedy, we want it. And maybe that works too. If you really want it, you might get it.
It being what?
If you don't really want it, you won't get it.
It being what?
I don't know what you want. It's what you want.
It depends how you listen. He's very repetitious if you just listen, if you don't really listen, and you're just aware of the and the superficial meaning. Whereas if you really listen, you can say that the bird singing in the garden's repetitious, the blackbird sings the same week after week. But if you really listen, it's always new. And the same thing with Krishnamurti. If you really listen, it's new.
There's an art of listening. When you listen to Beethoven or Mozart and so on, you listen. You don't try to interpret it. And if you're romantic, sentimental and all that, you absorb, you listen. There's some extraordinary movement going on in it. Great silence, great depth to all that. So similarly, if you can listen, not only with the hearing of the ear, but deeply, not interpret, not translate, just listen.
So when they all leave the tent and they say, what he really meant was...
Yeah, then you are lost.
I remember when I listened to him for the first time, it was nearly impossible because I couldn't accept what he was saying.
Why?
Because it's very strong. He throws you back to all your things you can't accept. You see, you are greedy, you are jealous, you are all that, and you know you are. And when he throws you back at this, you say, no, I don't like to see that. Now, after some years, I got very used to, well, to look at this because I wanted to, because I saw it got really very much easier to accept it than running away from it, because if I run away from it, I got always more fear and fear and fear because the thoughts go round and round. So now I would say, I don't know if I understand him, but I understand myself a little bit better.
Our brain is very limited. Right? Our brain is so heavily conditioned by the scientists, by propagandists, by religion, by all the historical events, whether it's Lenin or somebody else. Our brains are conditioned. And we live in that condition. Right? And that condition is creating havoc in the world.
Is there a way out of that condition?
Yes, there is. That requires a great deal of inquiry. You cannot just say, well, tell me in 2 words.
People have tried to say in 2 words things like love one another, turn the other cheek. There are no easy solutions? There is no easy...
Of course not. But you see, is there an easy solution for a blade of grass that grows in the cement? There's a path there. And you see grass pushing, pushing, pushing. It broke. If it has life, it goes through. Right? Blade of grass. As our brains are terribly limited, our life is limited. Right? And can that brain, which has evolved through millennia, can that brain radically change?
Do you think that he is very insulated and protected by this lifestyle, that he doesn't really understand the problems that most people face?
I think he does, but I think he feels that they make problems when there needn't be problems. By not actually seeing what their problems are. And I think people do make problems that aren't necessarily there. And I don't see that it makes him any... I mean, they expect him to dress in, perhaps some people, in sackcloth and ashes and grow his hair and his beard. But does that really make you a more religious person?
Is it possible that someone could come here to one of the talks, hear what you say, hear in himself or herself the truth, and then go away and live in this quick result, quick society? Yeah, can the two coexist?
Of course. This has been one of the questions that has been troubling people. Can I live in this monstrous society, immoral, corrupt, and all the rest of it, with complete honesty about myself? Of course you can. So you have to ask, what is society, right? Is society different from me? Or I am society? I don't know if you follow this. I am society. I've created the awful thing. I'm part of it. Society is not different from me, right? So I don't reform the outer circle. Social reform, you know, all the political game that's going on. First I put my house in order. My house. Deeply my house in order. And then there'd be order out there. if you and I and all of us who are listening put our house first in order, we have created a new society. Somebody on higher...
It's a message that Krishnamurti believes could radically change the world in which we live, even if only a few of the thousands who listen actually understand. What happens in the tent is intended to be a conversation, but only rarely do the audience actually respond. They sit, almost as rigid as the speaker, grappling with his often enigmatic utterances. Few of them probably have any idea of Krishnamurti off stage, of his love of good clothes and pleasant treats.
You should see him in London when he comes to London.
Right.
How elegant he looks then.
What does he like to do when he comes to London?
He goes to his tailor and he comes up, say, for the dentist, and we always have lunch at Fortnum & Mason's in a very quiet place at the top, the fourth floor, and get his hair cut. And he hates London.
A lot of people would be horrified to think that someone that is preaching self-effacement, self-discovery, actually enjoys all those material and worldly things.
He doesn't tell you to give up happiness or to give up joy. I mean, if you enjoy doing something, then just say, do it.
Krishnamurti leads a life untroubled by money worries. Like the Queen, he's distanced himself from it, owning none and handling none. His personal expenses are met by friends, and the organisation of all the books and conferences is done by the Krishnamurti Foundation, a registered charity. The conference is held in the grounds of the Krishnamurti School. Here, in an enormous marquee, Kay plays host.
I've forgotten the name of it, you know, from Japan. What's that? Huh? Macrobiotic, that's it. Go crazy on that. As one goes crazy about yoga and all the rest of it. Laughter is part of seriousness. Right? If you don't know how to laugh and look at the sun, the trees, the dapple light and everything, well, you're not quite human being. If you're merely churchy serious, then on Sunday only, then it's not serious. I mean, laughter, smile, that sense of humor, enjoying good jokes, not vulgar, really good jokes.
The jokes Krishnamurti makes in public are rather sparse, but they, along with everything else he says, is enshrined forever on videotape. Modern technology is giving an advantage to Krishnamurti denied to past gurus, philosophers and messiahs. Every interview he does, every speech he makes is recorded and left unedited. Immediately after his morning speech at Brockwood, for £23, people can buy a copy of the event. So, even after his death, there need be no interpreters.
What impact do you think having the videos will have in the future?
On this, maybe we can avoid this that it is going to be spoiled, the original thought. Like we talked about a little while ago, maybe the whole Christianity would have been different if there would have been video in the time of Jesus Christ.
What do you think will happen when he dies?
I don't know. There'll be interpreters, there'll be people who want to build organisations. But the beauty of it is we have these videotapes, you see. They used to mistranslate the Bible, didn't they? Say he said this, he said that. But the videotapes can't lie. They're there for posterity. It'll go on with the individual. Must do.
How long are you going to carry on doing it for?
I've been asking people around, friends of mine, say, look, the moment I'm gaga, stop me. I don't. I've got plenty of energy. Because you don't carry all the burden of the past. Which is very nice.